Hello, and welcome back to the Ninox Programming Training Series. In this class, we're going to look at the fourth and final structure. This is the second repeating structure, the while do. Now, in our last class, we looked at the for do loop. This is a structure that allows us to repeat a block of code or a function up to a defined number of times. The while do loop repeats a block of code or a function as many times as necessary in order for us to achieve a stated goal, but we don't know how many times it's going to have to repeat to achieve that goal. You know what you're trying to achieve, and you're going to leave it up to Ninox to decide how many repetitions are necessary to meet that achievement goal. I've created this accounting dashboard, which allows us to look at all of our accounting sales transactions. And there are 2,500 transactions in the system. What we want to be able to do is pull a sample of all of our sales transactions, and we want to define the sample according to two metrics: the size of the sample and the total dollar value of all of the transactions in the sample. And both of these parameters must be achieved in order for us to have what we will consider an acceptable sample size. What we are trying to do is get Ninox to figure out how many times to run the same block of code so that both of these goals are achieved. Since we don't know how many repetitions are necessary, the while do loop is the perfect solution. Let's take a look at how we built it. We start off by defining two variables. What is the minimum sample size, and what is the minimum subtotal of the dollar value of transactions in that sample? We then establish two more variables and give them both a starting value of 0. Then we define the goal. The goal is that we have a big enough sample with enough dollar transaction value in the sample that we don't need to select anymore. Now, when we get to line 6 for the very first time, this statement is true. Our running count size is 0, which is less than our minimum of 10, and our running total amount is 0, which is less than our sample amount requirement of $800. So what this statement says is, as long as this is true, do the following. And what it does is selects a record, flips the audit record to true, and then increments the size of our sample by 1 and the running subtotal of the value of our sample transactions by the amount of this last record that was entered into the sample size. And then we come to a line 11 and we ask ourselves, do we have enough transactions in our sample to meet our size requirement, and do they add up to the minimum number of dollars necessary to meet our sample total requirement? If they do not achieve that goal, then this statement continues to be true, and we will pop back up to line 6 and select yet another record. And we will keep repeating this loop until we arrive at a state when it is not true that our sample size is too small, and it's not true that the sum total dollars in our sample size are too few. When this statement becomes false, it is no longer necessary to select more records and repeat this loop. So the structure will end with line 11. The while do is the perfect solution because it'll just keep repeating while this is true. Let's see it in action. I have defined minimum sample requirements of 10 transactions and $800. I'm going to go ahead and get my sample. And we can see that it required 17 transactions, well in excess of the minimum 10, to achieve our $800 goal. With 17 transactions, we got to a total of $847.66. If we had not pulled these final transactions, we would not have achieved our $800 minimum. Now I'm going to change the parameters. I now want 20 transactions with a sum total of a minimum of $900. Let's go ahead and get our sample. Now last time we pulled 17 transactions when we only needed a minimum of 10. This time we're pulling 20 transactions, going well over our $900 minimum. But again, if we had stopped here at this 18th or 19th transaction, we would not have achieved our 20 count sample size. So while we have failed to achieve both goals, Ninox keeps adding records to the sample. And when we have achieved both goals and it's no longer true that our sample size is insufficient, the while loop will stop running. You won't use the while do loop often, but when you need to repeat a structure in order to achieve a goal and you don't know how many repeats are going to be necessary, not only is the while do the perfect solution, it's the only solution. In our next class, we're going to take what we know about functions and apply it globally. We're going to move up from the table level and the field level all the way up to the application level and learn how we can create global functions and pass parameters so we can reuse those functions over and over again throughout our entire application. I'll see you in the next class. Visit us at www.nioxis.com. Here you can learn about different Ninox solutions. You can get tech support through our Ninox Help Desk, which is available 7 days a week, or you can schedule private one-on-one concierge sessions for training, or we can help you build your application. And if you haven't done so already, sign up for our free Ninox Learning Lab. We do this every Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. in the UK, 6 p.m. Central European Time. These free hour-long sessions enable you to learn more about Ninox, features, functions, and solutions. We have open Q&A where you can get answers to all your Ninox questions, and you can meet other members of the global Ninox community. We look forward to seeing you there.